the atom bomb. The program responsible for its creation was known as the Manhattan Project, led by the U.S. This project grew to employ more than 130,000 people and cost about $2 billion, which in today's 2012 currency is about the equivalent of $24 billion. These bombs worked by using nuclear fission or splitting a large, unstable atom. The bombs were capable of leveling entire cities. In this picture, you can see an atom bomb being tested at Bikini Atoll. Bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were called Little Boy and Fat Man. Now, nuclear weapons are still being produced to this day and are still causing lots of controversy worldwide.
Alright, women in the workforce. During the 1940s, women were needed to take over jobs as the men in the Rock War. Between 1940 and 1945, 6 million women joined the workforce. Many of the women worked in defense industries such as airplane plants. In airplane industries, the employment of women saw a 460% increase. Rosie the Riveter was a fictional character inspired by Geraldine Doyle from Ann Arbor, Michigan, to help sell the importance of women helping in the war effort. Rosie the Riveter was the ideal woman worker that everyone needed. She was loyal and hardworking. This character inspired so many women to help that by the end of the war, 18 million women were working, compared to the 12 million at the start. And the video clip you are about to watch is from the government film Manpower.
We are still short millions of hands. We must call upon women. All over the United States, women are called upon to leave their homes and take jobs. Among our young, unmarried women, and among older women whose children are grown, we have a large reserve. They discover that factory work is usually no more difficult than housework. Employers find that women can do many jobs as well as men, some jobs better. Tens of thousands of women are already at work in aircraft. More are being added as fast as they apply. This solves the breadwinning problem for many families whose men are at war. The government's policy is that women should get the same pay that men get for similar work. Where necessary, machinery is adapted for women's use. When a hand drill weighs heavily on feminine muscles, the lazy arm drill is introduced to take off the strain. When married women with small children have to take jobs, everything possible will be done to provide day care for the children.
Alright, and the next two stories are actually Rosie the Riveters from Michigan, and I found a website with just some of their stories, and I was going to share them. The first one is Grace F. Oshensky, and she was 17 when this picture was taken. Her boyfriend Nolan was drafted in the war, and while he was in the war, Grace worked at Dodge, Maine, making bows for Army trucks, and then went to work at Ford Motor Company in Highland Park, Michigan, making rivet parts for the B-24 planes. Then the second story is Maureen Merrill, and that's her shown. And it was actually her and her husband in this picture. They were married, but he didn't go off to war. So they worked together at Murray Body in Detroit, and this is them making a wing for a bomber.
No strike pledge. For the duration of the war, big labor organizations like the CIO and the AFL agreed to a non-binding agreement to end strikes. It was a non-binding, so workers were not forced to abide to this new agreement, but workers were strongly encouraged. The agreement was also non-binding so that the AFL and CIO could quickly drop the agreement without benefiting any single budget. Workers were not happy about this, but they agreed to refrain from striking before the war. ones who didn't agree with the new pledge went on strike against the leaders of the CIO and the AFL. Over 3 million workers spoke out against this new agreement. It was most common in the coal business, as a group of over 450,000 coal miners strike against low wages in 1943. Disputes like these were settled by the National War Labor Board, which was originally created in 1918. And if anybody could tell me who created it, I'll give this Snickers. Yeah, think who was president.
What year did you say?
1918. Wilson. Yes. It's a setup. This is John L. Lewis, who led the strike. And he's always saying that. That's him. And this is the NWLB. You can see that this is the workers, this is the businessman. And NWLB is supposed to be like America coming in. And the 450,000 coal miner strike actually ended with they didn't raise any wages. And John L. Lewis responded by saying, because they thought that raising the wages would make dramatic inflation. And so John L. Lewis responded with, "You mind first inflating the stomachs of my members?" In 1946, NWLB changed to the National Labor Relations Board so that it could exist during times without war. Through the new agreement, was controversial, it did not stop the rapid growth of the unions. In 1941, members numbered 10.5 million. By 1945, they swelled to 14.7 million.
Right. By the end of 1943, the priority of the country had completely shifted from the New Deal to the war efforts. You can see it's FDR and this war con, so it's a new deal. And it's kind of war now. So many of the programs in the New Deal, such as the CCC and the WPA, were abandoned because they weren't necessary due to the high employment that the war created. Along with being unnecessary, many programs were stopped because they interfered with production for the war. For example, electrical lines to rural areas were not being built because copper was needed for military reasons. Some parts of the New Deal, however, were permanently kept by both political parties, including Social Security and unemployment compensation. The work week was extended from 40 hours to 48 hours to increase industrial output. Towards the end of the war, the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, also known as the GI Bill, was put into place to provide college for veterans and also give them loans to start farms and businesses. And it also created low interest rates for them, so they could expand into like suburban areas where
Once World War II ended in 1945, the U.S. economy entered a recession. The recession was mainly caused by a significant decrease in government spending, a decrease in wartime production, and the inflow of men coming home from war that did not have immediate work or income yet due to the women taking over the workforce. The recession only lasted about 8 months though, and after the recession ended, the economy went into a boom period. And here's an unemployment graph for the 40s, and here's 1945, and as you can see, unemployment started raising and then it went to its real fluctuating cycle. During the boom period, when unemployment generally stayed low, unlike the Great Depression of course, and GDP was high. Here's GDP during like the Great Depression, and then it brings up, and GDP is gross domestic product, which is like how much is produced in the country. New jobs were also being created from the industrial system that was put in place during the war. Also, Americans began buying more homes as men came home from war and people were taking advantage of the low interest mortgage rates. Increase in demand for real estate led to an increase in construction jobs, which helped to further stimulate the economy. Another event that helped stimulate the economy was the baby boom of the 1940s, which was caused by the large quantities of men coming home from war at one time. The baby boom increased the United States population, and with an increase of population came an increase in demand for consumer goods, causing more production.